Welcome to Law Society Younger Members Committee Career Information Session number 9. Hannah Shaw talked to Julie Breen about dealing with high levels of uncertainty.
Okay, well, I'd like to say hello to everyone and welcome to our career information session on dealing with uncertainty. We'll start now as we've hit 7 o'clock. My name is Hannah Shaw and I'm a younger member on the Younger Members Committee of the Law Society of Ireland. I'm also an associate in dispute resolution in A&L Good Body. And we are joined tonight by the lovely Julie Breen, who is the professional wellbeing project coordinator, which is kind of my mouthful, sorry, for the Law Society. And Julie has a law degree and is also completing her qualification to become a systemic psychotherapist. So she's quite well placed to assist us in tonight's discussion. Hopefully tonight what we're going to talk about is the research, what research is telling us about young adults' mental health in general. And how that affects younger members and what supports are out there for younger members of the Law Society, because the Law Society actually does an awful lot that I particularly didn't know about before preparing for this webinar in that regard. And finally then, what steps we can take in general to nourish our mental health as young adults and or younger members and just people in general, I suppose, particularly during the current pandemic, which obviously adds to uncertainty levels for everyone. So you're very welcome, Julie. Thank you for joining us this evening. I wonder if you'd like to begin by just telling us a bit about yourself and the Wellbeing Project.
Sure. So thank you. I'm delighted to be here and thank you all for having me. I am the Law Society's Professional Wellbeing Project Coordinator. It's a handful. Like Hannah said, the Professional Wellbeing Project began last year on the back of independent research carried out in 2018, which looked at levels of stress in the solicitor's profession. So since the findings of the research were released, the Professional Wellbeing Project has been created with the aim of providing wellbeing supports and services to you. So I hope to share some information on those supports and services today, alongside looking at young adults' mental health, what's happening with young adults' mental health at the moment. Yeah.
Thanks, Julie. And I suppose I'd like to begin by asking, why has there been such a focus, or why is young adults' mental health such a hot topic in recent years? I mean, even prior to the pandemic, I think it's fair to say it would have been kind of one of the focuses of the Law Society, but also, at a wider level, people are noticing problems with, young adults' mental health more and more.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. I suppose the first thing maybe before we answer that question is to look at the words mental health and to look at what they mean. Because we talk about mental health a lot, but I don't know if we spend enough time actually, just thinking about what we're really talking about. So just before we get into that, maybe I'll just let you know what the WHO, the World Health Organization, how they describe mental health. They describe it as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So, back to your question about why there's been a focus on young adults' mental health in recent years. I suppose really it's because this can be one of the most uncertain and challenging periods in a person's life. You're all forging out your identity, setting a path for the rest of your life. And it's a challenging time. And because of this, it can also be a peak time for the onset of mental health difficulties. So catching and looking after our mental health at a young age is really important. There was a report written by Mental Health Ireland and Jigsaw together. Jigsaw is a charity that works with younger adults. And that found that 75% of all mental health disorders that persist into adulthood start before the age of 25. So it's important that we look at young adults' mental health and address issues as soon as possible. For solicitors in particular, the Law Society is really interested in looking at young members' mental health because the research that we carried out in 2018 was quite clear that early career and mid-career solicitors experience particularly acute stress in comparison to other solicitors. So, for example, reported stress levels were highest in the first 5 years for solicitors, and then the next highest was between 16 and 20 years. So, there's that was a big finding, and it was one of the standout findings from that research report.
Finding, I have to say, Julie, that makes sense to me. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
I'm just coming up to 5 years qualified now, and I mean that's kind of 5 years of trying to find your feet with clients and with partners, and potentially moving between firms, and
Yeah.
a lot of faking it till you make it. So
Yeah.
definitely rings a bell for me. That makes sense. And you're also coming up to, I suppose, well, a lot of people in our younger members bracket are also trying to make, decisions about what they might want out of, say, partnership with their own families. But do they want? And they juggle those. There's a lot of, it feels like crunch time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose that's important. That's what's important to say is that, if young members feel like they're alone in that, they're not. This is something that's happening for a lot of young members. So, there is increases in responsibility. You're kind of moving up in the world. There might be a lack of experience as well, and you're gaining confidence. So it's important to kind of give yourself a bit of a break. It's a challenging time, and it can be difficult. And like you say, Hannah, demands of family life. When should I start a family? Is it going to be easy for me to start a family? There's lots of different things that are, young members find tough and challenging in those early years. And I suppose at the moment, with the pandemic, we can also maybe factor in there might be financial worries. There's talk of an economic recession or depression. I don't know which one it is, but there's talk of that happening, and that's in people's minds. The insecure future, worried about bonuses this year, that's all in people's minds. So this was a report that was written in 2018 without considering COVID-19.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me when you say that, part of the definition of mental health revolves around being able to work productively and fruitfully, and maybe something that's quite uncertain to the future for people as a result of the pandemic. If you don't know how well your practice is doing or what the pipeline is, and you're relatively new in your practice, it just adds to your levels of uncertainty, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you think that the health situation of young adults is worsening due to the pandemic?
Wow. Well, I think, first of all, I think we should give huge praise to all the young adults, just like Dr. Holohan did last week. Ireland has the lowest growth in incidence of COVID at the moment, and a huge part of that is due to the fact that young adults have stayed within the restrictions. I think he talked about young adults having their contacts in the past 5 weeks, which is huge. So that's, just to say that, because it's been really hard for people. But yes, I think, we know actually, we know because we feel it, and I'm not a younger member, but I know younger members who feel it, just like everybody else, that life with the social distance, with the lack of peer support, comes at a high cost to mental health. But I think, before maybe we look at research on this, it might be good to ask one of the poll questions to our audience, if that makes sense. So we're trying to make it a bit interactive today with some poll questions. So if you want to answer the question number 1 that comes up on your screen now, that would be fantastic.
And hopefully that has come up on everyone's screen. I'm in charge of the polling and it's my first time.
It's up there for me, Hannah. Yeah.
By the way, the results are anonymous, that you won't see how you voted in the poll.
That's really interesting, yeah. I think we could probably end it there, actually, Hannah.
Okay, and I'll just share.
Oh, yeah, sorry, you haven't shared it. So, yeah, taking a look at that, everybody, you can see that general anxiety is up there as kind of the highest, if I'm read it correctly, and then it kind of evens out across the other experiences that that you're having at the moment, and it really does align with what we're reading at the moment around young adults' mental health. So I know the DCU School of Psychology wrote a report recently enough, and that talked about people between the ages of 18 and 29 experiencing significantly greater mental health difficulties than it was a study that was done on various different ages, and that age group reported significantly greater mental health issues than those above 50. The same group experienced much higher levels of loneliness than any other group, despite spending more time on social media and rating that as beneficial for their social contact. They were still the loneliest group out of all the groups in the report. And also something that you might find interesting is that young females reported considerably poorer mental health during the pandemic than males. There was a less tolerance of uncertainty from younger adults in Irish society than any other age group, fear for the future, and a feeling of lower control in their lives. And one thing that was really quite clear from their report was that spending a lot of time on younger adults were spending significantly more time on social media than older adults, which isn't really that much of a surprise, but it's just, to point it out is important. So that's contributing, all of these things and the lack of connection with other younger people is contributing to what you guys reported right here, right now with us today, which is high levels of anxiety, a low mood, psychological distress, growing sense of hopelessness, and concern and worry for parents. Yeah, so thanks for doing that poll with us today.
So I suppose now might be a good time, Julie, to talk about the kind of supports that are available within the Law Society and otherwise to help deal with those kind of feelings that are growing or exacerbated by the pandemic. Brilliant. I know myself, like I'm working from home, and a lot of solicitors are working from home, and I think that contributes to a lot of that as well. Like if I don't make myself leave the house during the day, then I haven't left the house in 3 days all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Definitely have a negative impact on how you're feeling generally. And feelings that you've described in the poll. So I suppose what the Law Society is doing to help us there will be
absolutely. I can show that to you now. So I'm going to share my screen. I think that's probably the best way of doing this. So share. So hopefully you can see what I can see in front of me, which is the Professional Wellbeing Hub. Can you see that?
I can see it anyway.
Yeah. Excellent. So the Professional Wellbeing Hub signposts you to wellbeing support services and trainings that the Law Society has put in place. So it gathers information, it keeps up to date information on all of these things, everything that relates to your wellbeing. So I'm going to just walk you through it if that's okay. So you have firstly you have looking for help. So you have independent and confidential supports for mental health issues. So for example, for all the different mental health issues that might arise, it might be addiction, it might be depression. There's a number of robust independent supports outlined here for you. So for example, there's Aware, there's Lynn, which is a place for addiction. There's various different, actually I'll just show it to you. Law Care is in there as well, consult a colleague. And you can find a therapist on it. HSE, Samaritan. So if you're ever looking for supports around a specific area, so for example, here you can see support for self-harm or suicidality issues, you know who to go to. Again, it's the same for bullying in the workplace, which is a hot topic at the moment also, and you can find out information here. So then also there's a section on helping somebody else. So this gives information on how to support a colleague in distress or who's stressed. And it also makes clear what trainings are recommended for you to go through if you want to do this. So there's, you can attend some of these different workshops. There's a whole article on this as well in the Gazette, if you want to read that. There's also a section on, nurturing yourself, so how to stay well and maintain your personal well-being, and workplace practices, so positive workplace practices that can help your firm, your organization. In particular for you guys, for young members, and we're really this is a really substantial support that's available to young members, and I'd love if more people used it. It's an independent support, completely confidential, completely independent of the Law Society. It's a mental health support, which means that you can, it provides emotional and psychological support to young solicitors anywhere in Ireland. You can avail of it at any time of the day or night. It's provided by two organisations, Spectrum Life with Spectrum Mental Health, and they follow robust clinical guidance standards, a code of ethics. You know, we chose them because they really have high standards. So what happens is you would call Legal Mind's free phone number, and you will be immediately put in contact with a counsellor or a psychotherapist. So if you have an issue, you can call that number as many times as you want. You will always be put in contact with a counsellor or a psychotherapist. So that's really nice for everybody on this call just to know, and also to tell your friends. None of this information gets back to the Law Society. What the Law Society gets back is, 50% female, 40% male use this service, nothing else. It's completely anonymized. So just so you know, once you make that initial call to the service, you can be referred on for further support. So the call is free. If you're referred on for further support, your first appointment with a psychologist, a therapist, a counsellor is free. And after that, you pay €30 per session. So it's heavily subsidised by the Law Society. And you get, you can go for as long as it is clinically important for you to go forward with sessions. So you might have 10 sessions, 8 sessions, 5 sessions with a therapist afterwards. And each of those sessions will only cost €30 after the first one. So it's a really good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and like, they're qualified, really experienced therapists. It's not, so it's really important. And I think sometimes, maybe somebody doesn't want to go through their work EAP. Perhaps somebody doesn't have a work EAP. So this is another option. And also it's deeper than an EAP. So for example, this support, provides preventative support. So talk therapy. If you just want to maintain your mental health, but then it also provides interventive supports. So when you're really actually becoming a little bit concerned for your mental health, that's an interventive support. But it also provides treatment and response strategies. So the treatment and response strategies.
Do you mind if I ask?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Grand.
I aren't clear what AP is, and also I'm just wondering, can trainees avail of Legal Mind, or is it limited to members of the Law Society?
What was the first question, Hannah?
Just when you mentioned, I think EAP, I'm not very
okay.
clear on what an EAP is.
Yeah, sorry. The employee assistance program. So sometimes firms will have employee assistance programs. And what I suppose what I was trying to say was that Legal Mind, it's more than an employee assistance program, because there's psychologists at the end of this service. Not to say that EAP programs aren't useful, they're just as good, but just if there was a really serious complex mental health issue, Legal Mind would have a psychologist there, which is, it's a little bit different than having a counsellor, because psychologists can has a different more of a medical background. So sorry, the second question was, is Legal Mind available to trainees? So Legal Mind is only available to members of the Law Society. So solicitors, members of the Law Society, practicing solicitors who have a practicing certificate. So for those who are trainees, they have an amazing service with the psychological services in the law school. So, we didn't think that we should be doubling over in that. So really there's two separate things. This is for members and the law school is for the trainees. Yeah, their psychological services,
Okay.
the counselling is available to them. Yeah, and I'm just going to show you actually. Legal Mind has its own portal. And you can, I'm just going to, it's really easy to register. So I'm going to click into it here. And, it's fantastic. And I would recommend that people register and take a look around. Like, for example, I've used some of these recipes in the nutrition section when I've been lazy and didn't know what to make. But it's really good because, it's all healthy. And, if you are concerned about putting on too much weight or the health content of your food, this is really good. So it looks out for sugar intake and salt intake and non-processed foods, and there's workouts here, there's a fitness schedule, endurance for beginners, endurance for like it's there's a lot in there. There's podcasts, there's and all of this is free. Like all of this is available to young members. So I just think it's an amazing resource, and there's just not enough people know about it. So yeah, and then going back to oops, I'm trying to get it. Yeah, so going back to the supports and services that are available to young members, the Professional Wellbeing Charter is another support that we've just provided, and really I invite young members to look at this. It's young members' chance to change the workplace culture, and what the charter is doing is it's asking firms to sign up publicly and collectively to improving leadership and championing behaviours, skills and practices that promote and enable professional well-being across all levels and at every role in firms. So the commitments are actually quite a lot of thought went into the commitments, and if your workplace was doing all of these, you would have a much nicer place to work in. It can facilitate firms attracting and retaining talent, and it can also help them keep employees like yourself, like young members. Because when you're going to an employer, you might want to ask, have you signed up for the Professional Wellbeing Charter? It's really important. The last thing I want to show you today on just as supports is the Unlock Wellbeing free CPD webinars. I think your young members would be interested in them too. So really, you can just click on that there, and you can move down and you'll find the Shrink Me Unlock Wellbeing.
Sorry, Julie, are you showing that to us now? I'm just still on the Legal Mind page.
Oh, okay. Are you? Oh, that's okay. I must be. Oh, I've moved to something else. Sorry about that. So I can actually show you on here.
No problem.
So,
That's the charter, is it?
Yeah, that's the charter there. Wellbeing Hub. Yeah, so I showed you the charter. Sorry, you weren't able to see it, but when you go on to the hub, you can see here Unlock Wellbeing. And these are, you can click on there, and essentially when you go in there, there are a number of different series of lectures, but there are free CPD webinars in there on wellbeing. Really interesting to watch. So you have, talks from the Wim Hof method of breathing through to a conversation with Chris Parsons, who's a partner in is Herbert Smith Freehills. I think it's a big partner firm. So he's this senior partner in there, but he talks about his relationship with alcohol and depression throughout his career. So they're really interesting talks. So yeah, and I mean, there's so much on here, and I'd love to spend more time going through it with you, but I think probably that's enough for today for your members. So I'll stop sharing there. And yeah, I'm not sure if...
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, no problem.
That's really useful, and like a lot of those supports I really didn't know were there, and like certain a lot of my friends don't either. So try and spread the word after this webinar. A list of all of those supports that are available, and this talk will also be recorded, will be sent out to all the participants afterwards. So no one needs to worry they didn't get the full sweep there or missed anything. It'll all be sent out after this chat.
Yeah, and actually, just to say, there's a really important thing happening at the moment, and that is that the International Bar Association have embarked on a project to address the mental well-being of legal professionals around the globe. So young members can be involved in, changing workplace culture across the legal profession in the world by doing the survey that they're asking everybody, all the different legal professionals in every single country to do. And the outcome of that survey is going to be really interesting, because it will have an effect on, for example, the law societies across the world and what they do for the legal profession in terms of mental health and well-being and how they change workplace culture. So we'll also be sending out that link with the various other supports after this.
Great. I think that's really useful. And then I suppose the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, Julie, is what kind of practical tips you have, if any, for young people to sort of help manage their stress during the pandemic and beyond, I suppose. Because It is a job that comes with a lot of stress. You know, people have deadlines, and there's a lot of people management and hand holding for other people, and a lot of the time, you know, solve it for others, but maybe necessarily not for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, is it things like what's available in Legal Mind, like, you know, looking after your diet and maybe like getting out and being active to some degree, like things like that help?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, I was conscious when coming on the call today that, you know, sometimes the well-being stuff can sound a bit condescending, because we're all going through a really tough time right now. And I think the important thing at the moment is to kind of just give yourself a break. Like, it's quite normal to be feeling the emotions that you're feeling at the moment, the loneliness, the anxiety. They're human responses. You know, anxiety is a human response to a perceived threat. And that was something Breed O'Mara from Aware told us, was it 2 weeks ago in one of our talks? But, you know, so it's really important to acknowledge that, you know, normalize it. It's okay. We're going through a really tough time. That's one thing. And maybe just like good enough at the moment is fine. Like, let's, you know, maybe let's not try and achieve the unattainable standards that social media sets us, you know, around wealth, relationships, all those different things. Just, you know, keep it simple maybe at the moment. I suppose a couple of things I suppose I would have advice about from my experience of working in the area that I work in the different settings, the therapy settings that I work in, is that maybe taking things as, you know, baby steps. So, you know, there's a real kind of sense of looking into this unknown future at the moment, the uncertainty, the doom and gloom, will this ever end? And I suppose I would suggest maybe just taking each day as it comes, literally each day as it comes. You know, I've talked to some clients about this. A lot of my clients, therapy clients, like just really taking it in like steps. Like, how will I get through to lunch? How will I get through to tonight? And this is what I'll do in my day. If you're having a really bad day, that's really helpful sometimes, to get through to the evening, right, rather than thinking really far ahead. Sometimes people practice kind of self-interruption as well. So like when you feel yourself getting a little bit panicked, anxious, whatever it is, because of a deadline's coming up at work and you're just feeling unmotivated, whatever it is that you're feeling, just stopping yourself, interrupting, going for a walk, calling a friend, running an errand, and that will just get your attention on something else, and that will just dissolve away. There's also the kind of, you know, there's scientific proof about getting up and doing 3 minutes exercise will actually boost your mood. So whatever that is, if it's doing push-ups, I have a friend who has a WhatsApp group with a group of friends, and they send each other videos of themselves doing push-ups, because it's part of their day, gives them boost of exercise. They want to keep well at the moment, and that's the way they do it. And also maybe we can move to work stuff in a second, but exercise again is really important, Hannah. And I think you mentioned that, like, you know, similar to when you connect with people and, you know, meet people and have conversations with people and dance with people, have dinner, whatever it is, you release oxytocins, you release endorphins, happy chemicals happen when you exercise. And I know that winter is here, so it's really tough. I find it really difficult. We were talking about this before everybody came on. Find it really difficult to motivate myself because it gets dark so easy, so quickly in the evenings. But if you actually plan exercise into your week, so you might have like a walk with somebody at lunchtime on a Tuesday, you know, exercise class on the Wednesday, but maybe at the start of the week, just actually planning out how you're going to get exercise into your weeks. I know that young members are really busy. Depending on your work, you mightn't be, but if you are really busy, it's kind of important to plan it. So that's a really good tip.
Because I often find when I try and plan it, and I always have the best intentions of doing it in the morning, and then something else comes in on my desk and I don't get to it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, but it's the first thing that goes in my day. If work gets busy, I'm like, well, I'll exercise tomorrow. And like the danger is if that keeps happening, it actually is probably more important when you're very busy to do it. But
completely, yeah,
in that trap.
And so I think that's also related to something else, which is maybe like, you know, sleep hygiene, which, you know, maybe not having your phone beside your bed, so not being able to scroll through your emails immediately when you wake up in the morning, getting up, getting out even for a 15-minute walk, or whatever it is that you have planned, 30 minutes of yoga, whatever it is you have planned, to do that first, and then to take a look through your phone and your whatever the different tasks that you have to do. But also, like the reducing screen time before bed, like your circadian rhythm is really important for your mood. So it's really important to get a good night's sleep, and like really nourish your sleep. Make sure that you have a nice place to sleep in. If smells help you sleep better, if having a bubble bath or just a shower before going to bed helps you sleep better, then start that process, because it can make it easier to kind of set a habit for yourself and feel relaxed. I think also, like, watching what you eat and drink is important. And alcohol it's quite difficult at the moment because we're at home all day, and it might be easier for some people to drink at home. You don't have to go into work physically with a hangover. So, some people might find, that they'll just have one more and one more. And alcohol is a depressant, so it impacts usually on your mental health. So being careful with that, and the same with sugar intake, because that can have you can have a real slump after if you continue to eat sugar, and you can become reliant on the sugar energy piece. So just watching that, and maybe finding healthier options for sugar rather than the quick highs. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've got here that might be useful for you to think about. Breathing is, I know we had Breda Mara here last week. Again, I was just talking about her, but she had talked about breathing being really important for your sympathetic system. So when you're anxious, your breath gets caught. We shorten our breath, we hold our breath, and our sympathetic system is pushed into fight or flight. So when we breathe properly, it can move us into more of a parasympathetic mode, which really relaxes you. And I was reading something recently, and it reminded me of an exercise that I used to carry out when I was younger. And it really is, taking your hand and tracing all the way up to your little finger and breathing in while you do that. So breathing in and then breathing out, and then breathing in and then breathing out, and going all the way through your hand. And by the end of it, you feel quite relaxed. I remember my dad doing that with me. So that's a really good way to just calm yourself down and get your breathing back to normal. Yeah, I don't know if there's
I think
other
that's all
stuff.
really helpful. Sorry,
Yeah.
Julie, sorry to go across you. We're just past 7:30 now, so
Yeah.
I'd say you could talk about this all night, and I could listen to you all night, to be honest. But I think the main message we have is that I don't know if you'd like to provide maybe your contact details, Julie.
Yes.
So just to reiterate that all of these supports that we have gone through, and all of those is going to be circulated to participants after this call ends, and I'll end it now in 2 seconds. But it just remains for me to thank you very much, Julie, for your time. It was really interesting, and I think hopefully beneficial for our younger members, certainly for me. And I'll definitely be telling all my friends about the supports that are available, because I really don't think that a lot of younger members do know that they are there, and
Yeah.
that they really are directed at us. A lot of it, Legal Mind is relevant for us, and I think everyone is probably really feeling the effects of the pandemic at this point. If you weren't already stressed, you are now. So.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if I was a young member, which I'm not, and I never was, but I would absolutely be using Legal Mind, and I'd be, the portal itself, and then also the actual having it. I mean, I pay for my own counsellor, so my own psychotherapist. I wish I got a reduced rate for my psychotherapist, but I don't. So I would really recommend. It's always good to speak to somebody, and I also think it's important that people just know about it. So if they are at a crisis point, they have a number to ring, which is good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you very much for your time again, Julie. So I'm going to end the Zoom there, but please feel free to pass on any of your questions.
Oh, and just to say my email address, because I will be passing this on, but if anybody wants to email me after this and ask any questions, my email address is professionalwellbeing@lawsociety.com. So professional well-being, hopefully you'll remember that, at Law Society. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Julie, and thanks everyone who came.